There is a moment in every believer's journey when the world around them grows silent. Not the peaceful silence of retreat, but the heavy silence of abandonment. You find yourself standing in spaces that once buzzed with familiar voices, now echoing with your own footsteps. Your phone, once alive with messages and calls, now sits quiet for hours. The opportunities that once flowed like rivers have dried to a trickle, and even your most earnest du'as seem to dissolve into an empty sky. If you are living in this season right now, if you recognize the weight of this spiritual loneliness settling on your chest like dust on a forgotten shelf, then what I am about to share with you may change everything you thought you knew about Allah's plan for your life. You see, there is a particular anguish that strikes at the very core of the believer's heart. It is the feeling of being left behind while others move forward, of watching doors close one by one until you wonder if any remain open at all. Your friends seem to drift away, not through conflict, but through the natural erosion that comes when your circumstances no longer align with theirs. Your prayers, once offered with burning certainty, now carry the trembling question, Ya Allah, are you still listening? This is the moment when Shaitan whispers his most dangerous lie into your ear. You have been forgotten. The pain of feeling abandoned strikes at the very foundation of human nature. It is the anguish that seeps into the believer's heart when, in the midst of a trial, they find themselves utterly alone. The sensation that doors have closed, companions have distanced themselves, and even their most heartfelt supplications seem to echo in emptiness. This is when Shaitan whispers his most venomous lie, you have been forgotten. But what if I told you that this very isolation, this apparent abandonment, is not evidence of Allah's displeasure, but proof of His extraordinary attention? Consider the ultimate example of divinely ordained solitude, our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. Before receiving the greatest responsibility humanity has ever known, the revelation of the Quran, he was not surrounded by crowds or comfort. Instead, he retreated to the cave of Hira, embracing total isolation. This seclusion was not a sign of abandonment, but an act of divine preparation, a sacred emptying of worldly noise so that his blessed heart could be made ready to receive the word of Allah. The cave was not a place of punishment, but a sanctuary of preparation. The Quran teaches us through the story of Maryam, peace be upon her, who withdrew to a distant place, isolated from her community, before receiving the miracle of Isa, peace be upon him. Her isolation was the prelude to the greatest honor of her life. It was in her moment of greatest vulnerability and solitude that Allah's provision and strength manifested most clearly. The Quran states, and she withdrew with him to a remote place. This was not rejection by her people, but selection by her Creator. The great Imam al-Ghazali taught us that halwa, spiritual retreat, is medicine for the diseases of the heart caused by excessive mixing with creation. The isolation that Allah ordains for you may be seen as a divine prescription to heal your heart from attachments, from the need for validation, and from the noise that prevents you from hearing the voice of your soul. He understood that sometimes our hearts become so cluttered with the opinions and energies of others that we lose touch with our fitrah, that pure natural disposition that calls us back to Allah. Here is the counterintuitive and transformative truth we will explore together. What if this period of isolation is not a punishment, but a promotion? What if this apparent desert is actually the private training ground where Allah is forging within you the strength, purity, and wisdom necessary to receive and sustain the Barakah you have been asking for? There is a particular anxiety that gnaws at the soul, the feeling of being left behind while others advance. Through social media feeds and daily encounters, you witness others prospering, marrying, climbing career ladders, while your own life seems frozen in an inexplicable pause. This comparison creates a poison in the heart, a narrative that measures your worth by external progress. You scroll through images of celebrations you were not invited to, achievements you have not reached, relationships you do not have. Each image becomes a small wound, each success story a reminder of what feels like your own failure. The voices in your head grow louder. Everyone else is moving forward. What is wrong with you? We have been conditioned to believe that being well connected, having a vast network, being constantly engaged with others is always a sign of Allah's blessing. We measure our spiritual health by our social calendar, our worth by our popularity, our success by how many people seek our company. But this understanding overlooks a profound truth. Sometimes the very connections we crave become veils that prevent us from connecting with the only source of true help, Allah Himself. The noise of constant human interaction can drown out the subtle voice of divine guidance. Remember the young believers in the cave from Surah Al-Kahf. They were not blessed while integrated into their society. They were saved through complete separation from it. When their community descended into corruption and disbelief, Allah did not strengthen them to resist while remaining among the people. Instead, He inspired them to withdraw entirely. The revelation here is profound. Sometimes Allah does not remove you from the problem. He removes you from the environment that prevents you from seeing the solution. The isolation becomes an act of preserving your iman, protecting your heart from influences that would corrupt your judgment and weaken your connection to Him. Their cave was not a hiding place born of fear, but a sanctuary of spiritual protection. In that isolation, they were not abandoned, they were preserved. Consider embracing what I call the sanctuary of silence. Each morning for 15 minutes after your Fajr prayer, before you reach for your phone or engage with the world's noise, sit in complete stillness. Focus your heart on this single dhikr. There is no deity except you. Glorified are you. Indeed, I have been of the wrongdoers. This is not merely repetition of words, but a profound acknowledgement that transforms solitude into intimate conversation with Allah. You are not alone in an empty room. You are alone with the One who is always present. Think of your heart as a vessel that has been filled for years with the noise of opinions, expectations, and judgments of others. Every conversation, every social interaction, every piece of advice has poured something into this vessel until it overflows with confusion. Isolation is Allah's mercy, gently turning that vessel upside down, allowing everything that is not from Him to pour out. The emptying feels like loss, but it is actually preparation. Once the vessel is clean, Allah can fill it with His light, His wisdom, His peace, but only after it has been completely emptied of everything else. The silence you fear is not emptiness. It is sacred space being created. There is a visceral panic that grips the heart when the source of security you thought you controlled is suddenly removed. Whether it is a job that defined your identity, a relationship that anchored your emotions, a client that sustained your income, or health that you took for granted. When these pillars crumble, the ground beneath your feet seems to disappear. This is the moment when you realize with terrifying clarity that your trust was not truly in Allah. It was in the means He provided. Your tawakkul was not in Ar-Razak, the provider, but in the provision itself. Your faith was not in the Creator, but in His creation. The panic reveals the truth. You had committed a subtle form of shirk without even realizing it. You had made your security dependent on things that were always temporary, always beyond your ultimate control. We often confuse tawakkul, active trust in Allah after taking proper means, with mere passivity. But there is an even more subtle error. We think we are practicing tawakkul when we are actually practicing dependence on the asbab, the means themselves. True tawakkul means tying your camel and then trusting Allah with the outcome. False tawakkul means tying your camel and then trusting the rope. The difference is where your heart finds its rest. Does it rest in the strength of the rope or in the wisdom of the One who guided you to tie it? When Allah removes your rope, your job, your relationship, your health, He is not punishing your effort. He is revealing where your trust was actually placed. Consider the story of Hajar, peace be upon her, running between the hills of Safa and Marwa. She made the desperate effort, searching for water to save her son's life. She climbed the hills, scanned the horizon, used every ounce of her human capability to find a solution. But the water did not spring from where she searched. It flowed from the most unexpected place, beneath the feet of her infant son, in the spot where she had left him in complete surrender to Allah's will. This teaches us something profound. Allah makes you exhaust your human efforts not to frustrate you, but to prove to you that the provision will not come from where your logic expects it. It will come from His mercy, from His wisdom, from directions you never thought to look. The isolation from your source of security is not cruelty. It is the prelude to witnessing how Allah provides in ways that bypass all human understanding. When anxiety about your risk begins to tighten around your chest like a rope, when the questions about your future start circling in your mind like vultures, pause, take a deep breath and realign your focus with this dhikr. Ya Razak, Ya Fatah, O Provider, O Opener of Ways. Repeat these names until you feel the shift, from focusing on the closed door to focusing on the one who opens all doors, from worrying about the limited means to trusting in the unlimited provider. This is not denial of your circumstances. This is redirection of your dependence. A brother once shared with me how losing his job felt like losing his identity. For months, he sent resumes into the void, sat through interviews that led nowhere, watched his savings dwindle. In his forced isolation from the career that had defined him, he began volunteering at his local mosque, teaching Quran to children. This small act, done purely to please Allah with no expectation of worldly return, connected him to a family whose business needed exactly his skills. They offered him not just a job, but a partnership in a venture that grew beyond anything his previous position could have provided. The lesson he learned was profound. When you work for your Rabb, the dunya works for you. When you serve the Creator, the creation serves you. But this miracle could only happen after his dependence on the previous job was completely severed. There is a particular spiritual exhaustion that comes from making the same dua for years, pouring your heart out in the same words, carrying the same heavy desires, and feeling as though your voice disappears into an empty sky. The weight of unanswered prayers begins to accumulate like stones in your chest. Doubt creeps in with its poisonous questions. Does Allah truly hear me? Are my supplications even reaching Him? Am I somehow unworthy of His response? The silence after your dua feels not like peace, but like rejection. We have reduced dua to a spiritual vending machine. Insert the right words, perform the right actions, and expect the desired outcome. We approach Allah with our wish lists, our demands, our detailed specifications of how we want our lives to unfold. This transactional view of dua ignores the deeper purpose of supplication. It is not primarily about getting what we want from Allah, but about aligning what we want with what He knows is best for us. The Quran reminds us, but Allah knows, and you do not know. This truth becomes luminous in the laboratory of isolation. When you are stripped of external influences, social pressures, and the opinions of others, something remarkable happens to your supplications. You stop asking for what your ego desires, the promotion that would feed your pride, the relationship that would validate your worth, the wealth that would earn others' respect. Instead, you begin pleading for what your soul truly needs: forgiveness for your shortcomings, peace in your heart, strength to accept His decree, closeness to Him. The isolation does not prevent Allah from answering your dua. It purifies the dua itself, transforming it from a list of demands into a conversation of surrender. Before you present your specific requests to Allah, begin with this supplication: Allahumma inni as'aluka khayra ma fi hadha al-amri wa khayra ma ba'dahu. O Allah, I ask you for the good that is in this matter and the good that will come after it. This simple addition transforms your entire approach to dua. Instead of demanding specific outcomes, you are asking for whatever good Allah sees in your situation. even if that good is not what you currently desire or understand. The great scholar Ibn al-Qayyim described the heart as a mirror. When this mirror is covered with the dust of worldly attachments, desires, and distractions, it cannot reflect the light of truth clearly. Your du'as become distorted reflections of your ego's wants rather than clear expressions of your soul's needs. Isolation is the gentle cloth Allah uses to polish this mirror. As the dust of external influences is wiped away, your heart begins to reflect more clearly. Your early du'as were blurred by the fog of your desires. After the purification of isolation, your supplications become clear reflections of His will, which is always better for you than what you thought you wanted. There is a persistent discomfort that haunts the believer's quiet moments, the awareness of spiritual stagnation. You find yourself trapped in cycles of the same sins, feeling the sharp pang of arrogance when praised, or the bitter taste of envy when others are blessed. In the noise and busyness of daily life, these diseases of the heart remain hidden, buried beneath layers of distraction. But in the stark silence of isolation, these illnesses scream. Without the constant noise to mask them, you are forced to confront the reality of your spiritual condition. The ego that you thought was under control reveals its true strength. The sins you thought were minor show their devastating impact on your heart. We have been taught that spiritual growth comes primarily through addition, adding more prayers, more fasting, more charity, more knowledge. While these are indeed important, we often overlook the equally crucial process of subtraction, removing the spiritual diseases that prevent these good deeds from bearing fruit. You cannot build a spiritual skyscraper on a foundation of quicksand. Before you can add layers of righteousness, you must first remove the layers of spiritual illness that corrupt everything you try to build. The Quran states with absolute clarity, "Indeed, he succeeds who purifies his soul, and indeed he fails who corrupts it." The word used here is zakah, the same root as zakah, the obligatory charity. Just as zakah purifies your wealth by removing a portion of it, tazkiyah purifies your soul by removing the spiritual impurities that contaminate it. Isolation forces you to examine the terrain of your heart with unflinching honesty. You see the cracks in your spiritual foundation, the swampy areas where pride has taken root, the unstable ground where envy has weakened your resolve. This encounter is painful, but it is absolutely necessary for building something that will last. You cannot treat a disease you refuse to diagnose. Allah, in His mercy, uses isolation to provide you with the clearest possible view of your spiritual condition. At the end of each day of solitude, ask yourself 2 questions and write down the answers honestly. First, what action or thought today fed my ego, made me feel superior to others, or increased my attachment to this temporary world? Second, what action or thought today nourished my soul, brought me closer to Allah, or reminded me of my need for His guidance? This is not an exercise in self-punishment, but in self-awareness. You cannot change what you do not acknowledge. The clarity this practice brings is the first step toward genuine spiritual healing. In the belly of the whale in the ultimate isolation, Prophet Yunus, peace be upon him, could have made many different supplications. He could have asked to be rescued immediately. He could have complained about his circumstances. He could have blamed others for his situation. Instead, he said, "La ilaha illa anta, subhanaka, inni kuntu minaz zalimin." There is no deity except you. Glorified are you. Indeed, I have been of the wrongdoers. His salvation came not from avoiding responsibility for his choices, but from complete acknowledgement of his spiritual condition. The moment he confronted his nafs, admitted his error, and turned wholly to Allah, the whale was commanded to release him. Sometimes our liberation requires our complete surrender. The mind, when left to its own devices, becomes a factory of anxiety, producing an endless stream of what-if scenarios that paralyze the heart. What if I never recover from this setback? What if I remain alone forever? What if my health continues to deteriorate? What if I never find meaningful work again? These questions consume your mental energy, steal your sleep, and corrode your ability to find peace in the present moment. The uncertainty of your future becomes a weight that crushes your spirit. We think that yaqeen, certainty, comes from having guarantees, from knowing exactly what will happen next, from having control over our circumstances. We believe that faith is strengthened by the absence of trials, by the presence of clear signs, by the comfort of predictable outcomes. This understanding is exactly backwards. True yaqeen is not born in security. It is forged in the complete absence of security. Consider Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him, being thrown into the fire by his own people. In that moment, he had no earthly reason to believe he would survive. Every logical calculation suggested his death was certain. But his certainty was not in the absence of fire, it was in the presence of Allah. He did not trust in the likelihood of survival, he trusted in the one who controls all outcomes. When he was thrown into the flames, Allah commanded, "O fire, be coolness and peace for Ibrahim." The fire did not cease to be fire, but Allah transformed its nature for His beloved servant. Allah places you in the fire of uncertainty, not to destroy you, but to teach you that He is the only security that truly exists. Your job might disappear, but Ar-Razak remains. Your health might fail, but Ash-Shafi remains. Your relationships might end, but Al-Wadud remains. When the anxiety about your future begins to circle in your mind like a storm, when the fear of what might happen starts to overwhelm your ability to function in what is happening, practice this. Close your eyes and visualize yourself placing your deepest fear into the hands of Allah. Then repeat with your entire heart, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil. Allah is sufficient for us, and He is the best disposer of affairs. Repeat this until you feel the subtle shift in your chest, the gradual transfer of the burden from your shoulders to His. This is not denial of your challenges, but redirection of your trust. Yaqeen is like a spiritual muscle that cannot grow strong by lifting light weights. A person who has only experienced ease has spiritual muscles that have never been tested. When the heavy weight of real trials comes, they cannot bear it. Allah, in His infinite wisdom, places you in the gymnasium of isolation and uncertainty. He hands you a weight that feels impossible to lift. It is in the struggle to lift this weight, not through your own strength, but through complete reliance on Him, that your spiritual muscles grow strong enough to carry the blessings He has prepared for you. The uncertainty is not meant to crush you. It is meant to train you. As we come to the end of this journey together, let us step back and see the complete picture. Your isolation was never abandonment. It was invitation. A divinely orchestrated khalwa, a spiritual retreat designed to empty, purify, and strengthen your soul. You were not being left behind while others advanced. You were being prepared at the front lines of a different kind of battle. The silence was not emptiness. It was sacred space being created. The closed doors were not barriers. They were the removal of distractions from the one door that truly matters. The loneliness was not evidence of Allah's distance. It was the prelude to a closeness with Him that would not have been possible while you were surrounded by other dependencies. Allah promises us in His book, "For indeed, with hardship comes ease." Indeed, with hardship comes ease. Notice the wisdom in this repetition. The ease does not only come after the hardship, it is born with it, grows within it, emerges from its very heart. The Barakah you have been seeking was being woven into the threads of your patience during every moment of your isolation. The strength you needed was being built through every day you chose to trust Allah despite the uncertainty. The purification you required was happening through every night you turned to Him when everything else had been taken away. The great poet Rumi understood this truth when he wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you. The feeling of brokenness you have experienced, the loneliness that has carved hollow spaces in your heart, the uncertainty that has stripped away your false securities. These were not punishments. They were openings, sacred wounds through which the light of yaqeen, the illumination of hikmah, and the warmth of divine closeness could finally enter your soul and establish permanent residence there. As you move forward from this season of isolation, I invite you to do something that may seem impossible. Thank Allah for the preparation. Thank Him for the emptying that made space for His fullness. Thank Him for the silence that taught you to hear His voice. Thank Him for the solitude that revealed your need for His company. Thank Him for the closed doors that forced you to seek the door that never closes. Thank Him for the broken securities that taught you to depend on the security that never fails. Thank Him for the unanswered prayers that purified your heart to ask for what you truly needed. You are not emerging from this experience as a wounded survivor, but as an honored graduate from the most exclusive school in existence, the School of Tawakkul. You have been taught by the divine teacher himself, prepared in his private workshop, refined in his sacred laboratory. You were not broken, you were sculpted, you were not forgotten, you were chosen, you were not abandoned, you were prepared. Now, with a heart polished by patience, a dua purified by surrender, and a tawakkul forged in the fire of uncertainty, you are ready to be both a channel and a vessel for the true and lasting barakah that only Allah can grant. The isolation is ending not because you have suffered enough, but because you have learned enough. The doors are opening not because you have waited long enough, but because you have been prepared well enough. Step forward into this new chapter of your life with the confidence of one who has met Allah in the depths of solitude and emerged knowing with absolute certainty that He is always, always enough. And when others come to you in their own seasons of isolation, when they ask you how you survived the silence and the uncertainty, you will smile with the wisdom of one who knows the secret. You were never alone. You were never abandoned. You were never forgotten. You were being loved in the most profound way possible, through preparation for blessings you could not have received any other way.